That's
Hello.
us. Hi.
Welcome to another edition of the Indignants. Today we are going to be talking about. Give me a sec here while I pull up.
We're totally organized.
We are
100%.
totally
We've-
We're
organized.
right on the ball.
Yeah.
Yes, we are.
So
Things are
today,
running very smoothly today.
Nothing's
yeah,
going wrong.
today's September 27th, and today's topics: Evergrande, China's Lehman Brothers, COVID passports, and the Occupy movement 10 years later. So, how is everybody?
Feeling all right, I guess.
Yep.
You don't say.
R. Kelly today, that was in the news. So
Yes, I caught a snippet of that.
Yeah, Anime Paul resigned. Oh, okay.
That too. Yes.
yeah,
Maybe someone could summarize the whole R. Kelly thing for those who don't know. Cool. Yeah.
does that sum it up?
Wow.
Yeah.
Thanks.
No.
Oy.
Mhm.
And he's gone. There you see. It's the gods of Celine Dion that are.
Yes. Trying to
Yeah.
protect her.
Yep.
Dun, 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 dun. It's them. It's the
It's them.
the people
It's
in white
Q.
cars
It's
who
Q.
also like Celine Dion.
So yeah, the other stuff in the news, guys. The one that I think we probably can really talk about is the passports, and the pushback from a lot of people on this.
Yeah. So vaccine passports kicked in Ontario on the 22nd. So now basically there's a lot of public spaces now where if you want to go in there you have to show proof of vaccination. So like a lot of bars and restaurants, places like that, you now have to show proof of vaccination if you want to go in there. And there's a lot of outrage over it. There's a lot of, it's a controversial.
Oh,
My
was that
audio.
what was happening at Victoria
No.
Park the weekend?
I'm not sure if it was at Victoria Park, but I do know that afterwards they attended the Works Burger Company and proudly displayed that the owner there, who I had no idea was a PPC candidate for Toronto Centre. So thank you, Chris Guy, for once
Ooh.
again outing another restaurant whose threshold I will never cross. And I have some big questions for the Works head office in regards to food safety if they can't follow pandemic regulations. So, how safe you keeping your meat if you can't keep your people safe? Has
Right?
anybody been
I
asked for a Vax passport yet?
Yeah.
No.
yes, actually,
No.
I walked into the coffee shop in Wortley Village here and was asked for my vaccine proof, and so I flashed it and cool, all right, sit on this patio and drink my coffee. The security and safety, the knowing that nobody around me has not been vaccinated.
Yep. Yep. I tried to go to a restaurant while I was in the megalopolis of Toronto last week, and they had decided they were not going to offer table service. They were just going to offer
Hmm.
takeout only because they did not want to have to deal with the hassle of asking people for vaccine passports and to which point I said, what if I wanted to order a drink and you needed to ID me? And they go, well, we'd have to do that, of course. So,
Mm,
freedom.
freedom. Yeah. So,
So yeah,
as our viewers can tell, we certainly fall on the side of vaccine passports being a good thing in this group.
Well, I don't
Immunization
necessarily
records. Let's
fully
call
agree
them
with that.
immunization
Okay.
records. It's a record of
All right.
immunization. That's all it
I
is.
would probably be in the same camp as Bailey. I would be apprehensively agreeing to the situation right now.
I
Only
think the
because
apprehension is wise because the devil's in the details on this
Right.
one. Because like we're all
Right.
anarchists here. We reject and resent state control, state power that's untoward. But on the other hand, there is a place for it sometimes, given that we don't live in a society where everyone is co-equal and all thinking very deeply about one another's safety and security and well-being. Sometimes some state power is kind of useful.
for me,
Right. I guess.
Go ahead, Bailey.
I was just gonna say, I guess for me, what I think about a lot when it comes to vaccine passports is where it's not so much the current situation, right? It's not so much, right now we're in a pandemic. You have to show that you've been vaccinated to go into public spaces, especially public spaces that tend to be very high volume. It's not so much that in and of itself that worries me. It's like, where can this lead and where do we draw the line with this kind of thing? Because I think that on one hand, like one of the arguments in favor of vaccine passports is that, your entire life you have had proof of immunization. You've had to show this when you go to register for school, that kind of thing. And people argue that it's no different from, what we already have in our medical records. But at the, and I can understand that argument.
Nobody's ever told me that I can't go to a business though because I haven't had my measles shot, right? Like that's
exactly, and that's kind of what I'm thinking about with this. Is like, is this something that we have had to do, our entire lives? Is like show our vaccination records, show our medical records when we want to go into a restaurant or a bar? No, we've never had to do that. Nobody has ever asked me either.
Our generation,
do I have
though.
my Yeah, like, but it's like we've never had, like, yeah, exactly. At least in our generation, it's like you don't show your vaccination records or your medical records at all when you want to go. You just go into a public space, right?
The word
your
unprecedented
medical
gets thrown
information,
around a lot.
right? It does. But it's like, so where can this lead? And kind of lost my train of thought.
Sorry.
That's okay.
Sorry.
That's okay.
But I see what you're laying down there. Like there is a slippery slope that we could tumble down.
Right.
So we should be cautious of such things.
We absolutely should be cautious. And it's like, where does this lead? It's like right now it doesn't seem like such a big deal because we're in a pandemic. Yes, we have to consider everybody's safety. But at the same time, it's like your medical information should be private. You shouldn't be asked about your medical decisions, your medical information, to go and have a beer somewhere, right? Like I think that there's kind of an inherent problem with that. And don't get me wrong, guys, like I'm fully vaccinated myself. I'm very pro-vaccine. I want everybody to get vaccinated so that you don't die from COVID, right? Like I'm by no means an anti-vaxxer. I just want to make that very clear, but I do think we need to be very careful when it comes to how things like vaccine passports and vaccine mandates are enforced. And there's another side to this too, is not every person who is unvaccinated is an anti-vaxxer. There are different reasons why people don't get vaccinated. Like there are medical conditions, disabilities,
and they're entitled to their exemption,
issues,
right? Like that's the thing.
Yes,
you are entitled to valid exemptions. The problem is the people that are arguing about this, their cause for a valid exemption is ignorance, usually 99% of the time.
Yes.
And
And
the other
Either
thing,
ignorance or
Yes, and
fear
it's
or
about
both.
and it's about personal preference for those people. It's not about
Yeah.
having a medical condition or having a legitimate reason for not getting vaccinated. So I
Right.
think that it's something that we need to consider, is that there's different situations, because I find that some of the narrative around this is very black and white. It's very much like, you know, the vaccinated versus the unvaccinated, when there is, you know, some of the unvaccinated like have legitimate reasons not to be vaccinated right now. And you know, I think that we need to be
dicks.
aware that, you know, there's different perspectives and different life situations. And you know, we don't want to just label everybody that's unvaccinated as, you know, a crazy anti-vaxxer, because that's
well,
just not true. And so
no, and that's the thing.
I
Not
just want to
everybody is a
interject here.
crazy anti-vaxxer. Go ahead, Mike.
I mean, I think that the fear of them knowing our medical records is a little overblown, because, like, it's just whether you've been vaccinated or not. If it was our medical records, yeah, I would be
well, see,
dead
that's
set against this stuff.
that's why I'm
Right.
concerned about where it could lead,
Right.
because where do
Right.
you draw the line with something like this?
Well,
Oh,
and
And
this
you
is
have
you
to
know,
draw
it's
the
a
line.
slippery slope argument. And
Right.
I know that that's
Right.
really
It's
common, but
Yeah. But this
It's
is where the
important
line is
to
drawn, though, because right now we're in a situation where we,
hope
in
to
some
never
certain
encounter it again.
circumstances, need to be able to do this, right, in order for these businesses
right.
to stay open, right? So they
Yeah.
should be
it's not
thankful
like
that at
the
least
one
we're not in a
thing.
shutdown right now, and
Yeah.
they have the ability to be able to generate revenue and have workers work and stuff like that. Does it suck? Hell yes, right? But, you know, it's kind of like me at my work right now. You know, I sell kitchens and bathrooms. That's my thing right now. That's what I do. And sometimes I have to help people load that stuff in the back of their pickup truck and stuff. And they usually pull around back, and then they, you know, jump in, and they don't have their mask on. And it's like, well, you have to wear your mask, because, like, I'm going to be lifting this heavy furniture with you into the back of your truck, right? And everybody gets it. But
Yeah.
you know, and it's a pain in the ass, and I hate telling people, but they all understand it too, at least. So,
Right.
you know,
I guess my question is like, is this where we draw the line? Is it going to stay like this, or is it going to go further in the
Well, I
future and
can
they're
tell
going to
you right
use
now,
this
we
as a
already
reason?
we already have privacy legislation that protects your health information, and Canada's actually pretty solid on that. Like right now, Nova Scotia and BC have the best regulations. They actually specify that your data must be held in the province as well. Ontario and most
Yeah.
other places, it's like Canada only, but we're starting that data islanding with our medical data, because that's one that we're really protective of already, and we should continue to be so. I think almost
Yes.
what we're going to see here when it comes to these, like, obviously they would, like, every country, every ruler would love this identity system, present your passes at every line you cross, because that's what hello, that's what borders are based upon. This is, I say you can come here, you say you can't go here. Do I think we're probably going to have to go further with these vaccine passports? Absolutely, absolutely. And do I think it's, you look at something like the Black Plague, where it was carried by fleas, it was extremely communicable, it's wiping out thousands. If this was a pandemic on that scale, how far would you be prepared to go to say that you can't go to these certain places until you
oh
get
yeah,
that damn vaccine?
well, that's what we had in our
Yeah,
lockdowns
that's a
too.
fair point. Yep.
Like it's
Yeah, and
Yeah.
it's not like the one thing inevitably leads to the next. It's a matter of ensuring that there is a rule in place, a law in place. This is the whole point of having the rule
Mhm.
of law, is to have it codified that this is what we are going to require. These are the freedoms that we are going to have to give up in order to have this level of security, and no further. Because
Yeah,
if it
that's why
becomes
this.
Yeah.
necessary to do something more, then we need to have another discussion about that. We need to have another legal decision-making process. Because, like, we've had a
Yeah.
decision-making process here, and we've decided that this is a thing that is necessary in order to ensure public safety. These are the freedoms we need to give up. This particular freedoms we need to give up in order to get general freedom. based on science, based on reasoning, based on medical science. So, like, yes, I agree that there is to be concerned there, but as long as all the privacy regulations are observed, and as long as this is the limit of it so far, without um, and if there is any further expansion, it needs to be discussed. Then I think this is
Yeah.
okay from my perspective.
So do you guys think that this is
Yeah.
overblown? Do you think the right wing is taking advantage of this stuff? You think this is overblown?
Yes.
Yeah.
Now,
I
you do
do
see what's
think that
happening in
the way.
Australia right now too, right?
All over the place, they're
No,
rioting.
but I do. I mean, I like the thing about the right wingers is that they are taking the anti-vaccine passport attitude and anti-vaccine attitudes way too far, to the point where they're using terms like segregation to describe the vaccinated and the unvaccinated, and they're basically saying that it's no different from, like,
Nazi
I
you know,
Germany.
was
like
having an argument
from
with
black
somebody
people
last
and
night.
brown people not being able to be in the same room as white people. Like they're saying that it's like the
Sorry,
same
you may
thing
carry a
as
communicable
like,
disease, or I could be carrying one that could kill you. Like,
Yeah.
people are forgetting this vaccine is not an immunization. This is not a guarantee you're not going to get COVID. What it is it's kind of like a buffer to make me stronger against COVID. So I
Harm
don't
reduction.
end up, I don't end up with
Yeah.
a tube crammed down my throat, taking up an ICU bed that could be used for somebody's mother, brother, sister, or father, right? Like,
And
this
it
is
becomes less effective as time
Yeah.
goes on too. So the longer we put this off, the worse it's going to get all the time. So
Well, and this goes back to the original thing about lockdowns in the first place. Like, if we had done a proper full lockdown, the entire world for 2 weeks, just
how do you do
everybody
that?
stays home, COVID wouldn't be a thing anymore.
Right. You
We'd be
can't do
done
that.
already.
It's
Yeah.
impossible. Yeah. It's impossible.
Yeah. And this whole idea that somebody is being oppressed in the same way as, black people and brown people have been oppressed by this white supremacist society, this white supremacist system that we live in. Like, comparing their situations to that, like, that is
Because
absolute
they can't get their nails
bullshit.
done.
And
They can't go
it
shopping.
is, yeah, and exactly, Eric, it is insulting. And so, I mean,
Have
those
you
people
seen
are just way.
Bailey?
What's that? Yeah.
Have you seen the video from the Eaton Center?
Oh, I have a video
Oh
for
dear.
you, folks.
Yeah.
I
Let's
That
have
was
play.
the
embarrassing.
Let's play that video.
Let's go to the tape here. You ready for this?
Okay.
Let me pull up my
Can you
screen.
set it
Yeah.
up, Matt? Can talk what's going on, like sort
Oh,
of.
we have a Canadian moment here. Hold on a second.
Oh yeah.
Dun,
Canadian
dun,
heritage
dun.
moment.
Oh
Ready?
boy.
Yeah, something to be proud of.
Let me make sure my hold on a
Well,
second.
I'm
here.
not actually seeing your screen. So
Yeah.
I'll
Yeah.
just take
me
your word
neither.
for it.
Oh yeah, we can't. What's going on here?
Are you not watching the stream?
I am watching the stream now. Yeah.
The loon. The loon is also known as the Great Northern Anti-Mask,
got it like this.
anti-vaccine,
Who did
anti-science,
Who
dickhead.
did this?
The loon has an amazing ability to look much shorter in captivity than it does in the wild. The loon does not care about anyone else other than itself. For a more complete story of the loon, why not contact the Department of Justice in Ottawa?
Man, oh man.
So that is my video for the day, with Chris Anti-Vax Sky being arrested. And the
That is
one
great.
thing everybody has kind of pointed out is how tiny he is in that video. Like, he is a petite little man.
Can you put
Yeah.
on that one from the Eaton Center?
Yes, absolutely.
This is what. Yeah, it's just unbelievable. Like. So Apparently, okay, first off, you don't need a passport, a vaccine passport to get into a mall, from my understanding. Because where I work, you don't need to, so I think it's a retail kind of place.
Yeah, it's just a
So
hallway.
it's
Yeah.
not, yeah, you don't need to, right? So these people
Yeah.
decided
So
to,
Okay, so I'm gonna cut to
for
the tape.
people.
that's what I was just gonna set up. Yeah,
Okay, can we just like provide a bit of context
that's what I was
No.
gonna
so
do.
like people
There shall
who
be
are
no
not
context
are not
ever.
familiar with
Just
That's what I
random
was
things
trying to
thrown
do
at
there.
people.
context. Okay.
No,
Yes.
must be
So
taken as it is.
for anybody who's not from Canada or from Ontario, and you're not familiar with the Eaton Centre, so it's like this giant mall in Toronto. It's like 3 floors or something. It's like really, it's a big place. And on the weekend, this is on the weekend, right? On Friday. I think, yeah, it was like just a few days ago. There was a free vaccine clinic at the Eaton Centre. People could just like go in and get vaccines. And so what you're about to see, the people storming the Eaton Centre, these are anti-vaxxers who are
Shopping
doing
mall.
this. Yeah, they're yeah, like anti-vaxxers are storming the Eaton Centre because there is a vaccine clinic there. That's literally like what's happening.
Yeah, we're gonna go to a thank you,
Doesn't get
City
much more
24.
complicated than that, I guess.
Yeah.
City Pulse 24. Thank you, by the way.
Following a violent anti-mask, anti-vaccine
And we're
protest, which was held right here yesterday.
We're gonna
outside
cut ahead.
This video, posted by lawyer Kareem Assad on Twitter, shows just how unruly the anti-vax, anti-mask protest got yesterday outside of the Eaton Centre.
My goal here is to create a record and hopefully to curb this behavior before it spreads and we find ourselves in a position where mob rule is the status quo.
The video shows a mob pushing and shoving and forcibly trying to enter the mall.
Officers were informed that there were security guards that were on staff attempting to deny.
So yeah, so shit got kind of ridiculous at the local shopping mall. This is the shopping mall's dead. Let's just call it now. Like when anti-vaxxers are starting to protest and ram themselves inside of a building that nobody really wants to be in.
Well, see, first it was hospitals, and now it's shopping malls. So yeah, anybody that's joining, if you haven't been paying attention to the Canadian news recently, there's been protests at hospitals and now shopping malls by these people. So
yeah, well, if you look at the rest of the world right now, things are getting a little hairy all over the place with this vaccine, anti-vaccine passport, anti-vax message that I don't know why there's such an underbelly to it right now, but they're rioting everywhere. And I don't like these people that are rioting. There's, like it's
Putting it mildly.
yeah, like I was behind the international vest movement. The anti-vax movement seems like the Canadian yellow vest movement, right? Like there's strange
the
things.
Canadian yellow vest movement was nothing like the European yellow vest movement, too. By the way, they just sort of co-opted an idea.
No, it wasn't.
Here, yeah, no.
And you know what? Like, I'm sorry, nobody. You have no right to go to dinner. There's no law that says you have the human right to go force somebody else to cook you a damn meal. Like, stay the fuck home. Get your shots.
Yeah.
Don't cough on fucking people. And read books. Like, fuck.
Tell us how you
read
Yeah.
books. Read books. That seems to be my rebuttal to a lot of people lately. Like at the
Have you read
end,
any
I
books
usually
recently?
say, and by the way, you should read some books.
Part of me wonders if, like, if maybe the omniscient puppet masters that be that, the 17 controlled 900 trillion bazillion gillion dollars of wealth, those guys are using this as like, yeah, we need these anti-rioting
For
laws.
sure.
We need these, more Patriot Act because of the anti-vaxxers.
That's what they talk about during the Bohemian Grove gatherings when they worship that owl. You knew about that, right?
Oh, everybody knows about that.
Oh, yeah, of course, yeah. Definitely.
We all have seen
That's
Joe
that's
Rogan.
definitely a
One
real
thing
thing.
that I find really funny about these people when it comes to masks in particular, is there a lag
I don't
Maybe.
know.
on
My
my end?
conversation's fine with you.
Okay. Okay. One thing that I find really funny about people who think that mask mandates are some kind of violation of their freedom is that if you're wearing a mask, you're covering part of your face, right? And like when it comes to like facial recognition and stuff like surveillance, right? Wearing a mask is actually like protecting you like more from surveillance and from facial recognition and stuff like that. So like
It
I don't
cracked me up about the
understand
Capitol protests.
why. Yeah. So I just find that really funny when you get these, it's the anti-mask people and the anti-vaxxers are pretty much the same group, right? But like one of their arguments against wearing masks is that it's a violation of their freedom and it's authoritarian and whatever. But it's like wearing a mask, you're actually safer from the police state, from the surveillance state,
Right.
you know?
You know what's
Like,
really funny? It reminds me a lot of, because I'm old enough to barely remember this, when they made seatbelts like a law.
Ah, yes.
oh yeah.
Back in the
Sorry.
olden days.
I could remember people in the
I
90s
bet
that
you
would still be like, I'm good. And
if
they'd like
you,
put their hand on the dash. Like that's
I
going to
bet
stop
you,
the Mack truck from plowing into them.
I bet you, Matt, if you Google anti seatbelt person, like you'd probably find a video of somebody saying
Oh,
the
dude,
very
I
same
have
thing
so
these
much
people
stuff
are
in my
saying,
library.
right?
I have so much stuff in my library for that.
But so these people would be saying the exact same thing. Oh, you're taking away our freedoms, right?
My choice to
You to talk
die
about the
in a
burning
completely
issues.
preventable accident.
Here we
Yeah,
go here. You ready for this?
do it.
65 days a year, most everybody in Richland Village, Michigan gathers at the Parkview to talk about the burning issues of the day.
Matt's
These days,
library.
there is only one.
I think everybody's in too much shock to explain it.
It is the new seatbelt ordinance. If the town council gets its way, seatbelts will be mandatory for everybody riding in the front seat of a car through Richland.
I'll have to detour the town to get to Kalamazoo. If they pass a seatbelt ordinance where I don't use a seatbelt.
I wouldn't wear my seatbelt. If I get caught, I get caught, I guess.
The Richland Village Council meets one night each month, and hardly anyone but the council ever attends these meetings, which may be why so many people were so shocked when they read in a local paper that the council had unanimously requested an ordinance the community is almost unanimously opposed to. For such a small town, 1 mile square, 435 people, Richland gets lots of traffic, though nobody can remember the last time there was a serious accident. But if everybody has to buckle up or pay a $10 fine, businessmen say they'll stop and shop and get their haircut somewhere else. Customers agree.
You maybe
Not the haircuts.
And you move a little bit further up. I stop here by him, then I move around the corner quick to go to the hardware store, and I don't have the seatbelt on. All of a sudden, somebody sees me, says that cost you $10. Why bother?
I think many of them are mad enough about it so that they're not going to run the risk of a ticket.
Meanwhile, the town council is standing by its guns.
People think that they're going to be harassed, and this is not our intent at all.
Their intent, they say, is to save lives and set a good example. There's an election here in March. By then, the town's 2 police officers will likely be enforcing a new seatbelt ordinance. After then, there might be a new city.
I oppose it on the basis that it replaces the free will of the individual with the desires of the state.
You can't force people to do things, If they think that it's necessary, they'll do it. If they don't think so,
The question here is whether we have the right, whether we have the responsibility, whether we have the judgment to turn to the citizens of this state and be there in 1984 big brother.
So yeah, definitely some distinct parallels on that.
Same stuff.
Absolutely the same stuff. Absolutely the same stuff. The same arguments. It's almost like the gun control people. They're all cut from the same cloth. It's so ridiculous. It's almost like it's intentional discord, right? Like They're, hey,
I'm not
Nothing new under the
anti-gun though.
sun.
Yep.
So,
Yep. So that's the anti-vax riots elsewhere though. They're getting a little crazy. That's for sure.
so yeah, Bailey, in Australia, they're going
Yeah.
completely nuts down there. So
Oh yeah.
shit's off the hook. Yeah.
Protesters wreaking
Really,
havoc
really,
in
really
Australia
Yeah.
for a second day, setting off flares,
well,
throwing rocks and bottles
I don't know
and
what's
injuring
going on,
officers.
really, to be perfectly
Police
honest
fired
with you.
pepper
All
balls
I
and
see is lots of reports of mass riots and protests and stuff like that.
Well, and it's worrisome because this movement, if you want to call it that, is only gathering steam. And it seems to be having a radicalizing effect that some people start with vague fears about the vaccine safety or vague distrust of government power, etc. And then once then exposed to the rest of the weirdos, it ends up
Which is
with
where I
them.
think a lot of the problem lies, because a lot of these guys are actually entrenched into this stuff right now and promoting it and stuff. So
Yeah.
they're building.
And it ends in fascism. Like
Yeah.
this is the problem with the People's Party as well. That like, yes, you might have a general libertarian
far
leaning
right
to you, but
activists
then
blamed for yeah.
you end up
Sorry.
in a party with a whole bunch of other far right people and just basically
Jesus.
lunatics, and suddenly you find yourself
Ooh.
goose stepping down Main Street.
Damn. Oh, that's a bottle. Whoa, whoa, whoa.
The protesters were defying stay-at-home orders. Major Australian
Yeah,
cities
so
have been
these
under lockdown for weeks.
Australia's like, because Australian has the ability,
And-
just like New Zealand, to lock down really well.
Protests stretched some
And
8 hours. Authorities say there
Wow.
are indications more protests are being planned.
That's
They're
some
urging
crazy stuff, man.
Yeah, like it's and it is
Yeah.
the far right that's doing it. I think they're using it I think their answer to, because there's very few COVID deniers now. The deaths are high enough that like you still have some COVIDiots that are like the virus is a hoax.
They're still
But
out
I think
there.
you're going to see a lot of the far right movement use it as strengthen our borders nonsense. You know, like we saw the argument during the
Yeah.
summer of shut down the flights, and it's like, yeah, no, rapid test at the border, get your vaccines, flow of traffic, like we could still do this, but I don't know what the draw, like, fine, like maybe you just give us all wristbands, vaxxed versus unvaxxed.
That's a bad idea.
You know, you don't want to wear the wristband.
Yeah.
And then you'll see these people wearing the fucking Star of David and pretending that this and that. And I've already seen them
People
start
still
to do
wear
shit like
their
that.
crucifixes, but if you want to wear a biohazard bandage because you're not vaxxed, if that's your new church is the biohazard label, I'm okay with that. You can walk around with your plague bracelet, and I'll be over here with my plague safe bracelet, and I'll get to go on cruise ships and you won't. Like that's what it's good. Well, you can still go on plague cruises. You can go on the plague cruise.
I get what you're saying.
Yeah.
I get what you're saying. I don't think I'd agree with you 100%, but yeah.
Well, I mean, there's
I feel ya.
always with anything like this, there's always questions
VIP?
about privacy and civil liberties,
Not
right?
VIP.
Even if these things end up not being major threats, there are always going to be questions, and there should be, right? Like we have to like stay on top of these things, right? But like one
life in a
thing that really
democracy.
gets to me is, yeah. One thing that really gets to me though is the fact that healthcare workers, there are healthcare workers that won't get vaccinated for stupid reasons, and it's like, I mean, vaccine hesitancy is one thing, not being too sure about it, like whatever, that's one thing. Like there's, again, like we've addressed this, like there's lots of reasons for it. Not all of those people are anti-vaxxers or right-wingers per se, right? But if you're a healthcare worker, like that's something entirely different.
Yeah, there's not
Like,
much
if
of an
you're
excuse
working
there.
like you should have all of your vaccines. You should be up to date with them. Like if you're working in a fucking hospital
I've
with
worked in
sick
health.
people.
Yeah, like I've worked in healthcare. Vaccine mandates have been a thing. You know, like if you were a
Yeah.
nurse that refused the flu shot, you didn't get like floor shifts anymore. You know, the unions were able to
Yeah.
say like, okay, you can refuse the vaccine and we'll try and find you work that does not involve you being vaccinated. But like I could not go to work if I didn't have my flu shot. End of story, right? Like
Yeah.
this is
Yeah,
not
I
new
mean,
for
when
healthcare.
you're
There's the military. The
yeah.
military mandates vaccinations. You know, like and 90% of these guys that are like, I was a veteran, they were fine with every other vaccine they were told. I watched the one interview where the guy's like, yeah, I got the anthrax shot 12 times. And it's like, now all of a sudden he's anti-vax. It's like, yeah, because
Yeah.
so you can't.
Yeah.
And
I hate needles,
part of
by
this
the
is
way.
like fear of novelty, fear of the new. And I can understand to a certain degree an initial reluctance about this vaccine because it seems to be new technology, this mRNA technology, but uh, like it has been under development for decades now. It's not a new thing.
Yeah.
And you would think that people's minds would have been changed after literally billions of people have now received it without issue. A handful of problems, very few of them fatalities, and the danger from COVID is significantly reduced, and there's demonstrable evidence of that. So at this point,
Yeah.
not believing that is a willful act of ignorance. You're ignoring evidence that's right in front of you. So
Yeah.
an organized movement refusing these vaccines is an organized movement of willful ignorance.
It is. And let me tell you guys something. Like, you know, in the beginning, like I was a little bit concerned, we'll say. Like I had questions about it because my thing was like, okay, this came out really fast. You know, you hear about other vaccines that take years to develop and you know, like they're you know, it's like years until you have a vaccine for something, right? So like how did they get this one out so fast, and is it really safe? Like I had questions about that early on, right? Is this safe considering how much testing did they actually do? Like, you know, how much information is actually out there about it and its safety? Like I had concerns about this. I had questions about it. And then, you know, I read something. This is actually on Twitter. Somebody, I don't remember the guy's name, but like he's basically an expert on vaccines, works in this field, has been part of the process of getting vaccines approved over the years, and he kind of explained the process and like why this vaccine was able to get out so fast. And basically, you know, when they're going through this process of clinical trials and getting approved by medical boards and whatnot, like it's really the bureaucracy and the bureaucratic process that takes so long to get through.
Oh,
They're
they were
really
able to
not, you know, for the
accelerate to
most part,
human
they're really
trials
not
really
altering
quickly
these
with these.
vaccines over that time period. Exactly. And so usually it's like, you know, it's the bureaucracy that makes it, you know, take years to get approved and actually get to people. But in this case, you know, we kind of skipped all that, or we accelerated all of that. So after learning, you know, hey, the actual process is not so much one of like, you know, altering the vaccine because you find problems with it. It's just bureaucratic bullshit. That made me feel better. Because
Yeah, it's
okay,
like,
we're skipping bureaucracy. It's not a safety thing, you
well,
know?
it is kind of a safety thing, but it's like an exceptional amount of safety concern, an exceedingly
Right.
huge amount, because like we don't want to make these kind of fuck ups. It's not like medical science can afford
Yeah.
to have a vaccine out that's not safe in any way.
I will
And the
hand
fact
it
that
to the
we're
medical industry. They do usually learn from their mistakes. They like fuck up really big, and then they go,
Yeah.
"We're not going to do that again." And then they fuck up in new ways all the time, right? It's been a long time since we've had something where we inject people and it mutates fetuses or it kills them, right? Like
So
we've kind of
in
Yeah.
1990, a researcher at the University of Wisconsin, okay, managed to do an experiment on some mice with mRNA. So successfully. So this technology has been in the works for like many a years, right? Even as far back as the 1970s, they were starting to do stuff with it. So, this isn't really overnight, right? It's just a new way of a delivery method, basically, right? And they've been doing it for a while, just not on this mass, right? So
Right, and the fact that it was put out really fast is
Right.
not like, I guess what I meant earlier was it does not inherently mean that the vaccine is unsafe or that it
We've
hasn't
put
been
6
tested
billion
properly.
doses. We've had put in over
Yeah.
6 billion doses into people's arms, and the number of
Billion with a B.
the number of adverse effects that have been encountered is, people are like, oh, it's just as many as COVID. No, it's not. It's like 0.0001% of adverse effects at this
And
point.
some of the good things about this I've been reading, because my mom's just got over cancer. And by the way, I'd like to let everybody know that the cancer in her body is almost entirely dead. She's got one tiny little spot. And Yep.
Congratulations.
Glad to hear that.
And they think that,
amazing.
right? They think that she's got to get over she got this luminitis. It's scarring from the radiation and shit, but she's got to get
It
over
must
that.
have been the essential oils and her healing crystals.
Man, it was CBD.
Yes.
That's it.
We're all
They're on a
doing,
heavy
remote
CBD
healing
diet.
sessions.
Yeah. I just watched a lot of Joe Rogan and did all the shit he told me to do, and
Yeah.
Well, that's like
right?
that one
Makes
picture
sense.
that was
Now she's
circulating.
almost cancer-free.
Right. So I'm really flippin' happy about that. And the other thing that I was reading about that is that this new delivery method that they have, this mRNA stuff, right? This new technology, they think that they'll be able to actually use that to fight a lot of cancers, and very successfully. And they've actually started doing it on mice and stuff like that right now, very successfully as well, like reducing tumor sizes gigantically and stuff. So this technology could be a lot of very good things, right? So if people are wondering what it is, read about it, read up about it, research it. And,
Read books. Read books.
Well,
Do your
even read news
research.
articles and stuff from reliable sources, right?
Yeah.
Don't trust me.
Like
or some
you
guy that's
can
in the
fully
basement of an
trust
apartment, like,
the indignants.org though. If you go to the
No.
indignants.org, you can absolutely trust everything
Yeah,
you
you
see
can
on
trust
there.
that. Yeah, you can trust
Buy our
all of this right now,
special.
though.
We have a special blend of ivermectin that is hand mushed into tubes by
Bailey hand mushes it, actually.
It's fair trade
there you go.
ivermectin.
Yeah.
Fair trade ivermectin all the way. So
it's just
hand
a
mushed by
minor
Bailey.
science primer here. The COVID vaccine, the mRNA ones, is basically a combination of two technologies. One being mRNA technology, where you've got an mRNA molecule, which is basically like half of a DNA molecule split in half, carries genetic information, but it's basically like instructions on how to build proteins that your cells use all the time, like your body's producing mRNA molecules all the time. And so then it ends up in the ribosome, which is what your cell uses to make proteins, and proteins are used to like do stuff, toolkits, etc. And so what the mRNA molecule does that is synthetically introduced here is that it tells your body's cells how to make the protein that's on the tip of the COVID virus. So there's no COVID virus involved at all, but it's like, hey, look at the tip of this thing. Keep an eye on the tip of that thing, because if those show up,
get
don't
them.
let anybody get away with it. So then your body knows what to do. And then the
Yeah.
other technology is these nanolipids. So like a lipid is like a fat molecule. And so these nanolipids are small enough and slippery enough, because they're fat, that they can slip the mRNA through the cell wall and to the ribosome where it's needed to enable to produce the
Can you spell ribosome for us?
Ribosome. Ibosome. That's it.
There you go. So
Yeah.
yeah, no, and so like
Yeah.
get your shots. Just get your shots. Save
Get
my
your
father-in-law.
shots, and if you're hesitant, if you're still worried about it for whatever reason, you know, you have questions, whatever, like
Bailey
that's
will
okay.
hold your
You're a
hand while
shitty
you get the
person
needle.
because of that.
It's
Yes,
okay to have
absolutely.
concerns.
I would, yes, absolutely. And you know, this is the thing, like that's okay, like but you know, I guess our advice to you would be just do your research, talk to medical professionals, talk to people who know what they're actually talking about. You know what I mean? Don't just, you know, read conspiracy theories and buy into those. Like, you know, like do your actual research. Make sure you're getting your information from good sources and
not a medical
you know, absolutely
professional that thinks
as
you
you
can
get
pray stuff away. Do not go
yeah.
to a
Yeah,
doctor that
no,
thinks you
no.
can pray your cancer away
Yeah.
or pray
If a
your
doctor's
COVID
telling you
away.
something that
Yes.
you think's questionable, look into that doctor, because if they think that they
Yes.
can do other things like that are really strange and stuff, then you might want to question their opinions on all kinds of stuff, right? So,
And to
'cause
be
Yes.
clear, being a
there are a lot of them.
doctor of one thing does not make you an expert in all things.
Mhm.
So if you see somebody
Yes.
saying, "Hey, look, this doctor says that the vaccine is bad because look, they're a doctor," make
Hey,
sure
Isn't
you're a
Matt.
doesn't
doctor of
Shaquille O'Neal
epidemiology.
have a doctorate from somewhere right now?
Does
So,
well,
What was the
he's a
name?
doctor of I think he's
doctor of
something
jamming. He
astrophysics.
can jam that
Doctor of
ball.
Something like
Jam.
that. But no, like even if one is a medical doctor, even if one is a scientist of some sort, even something that's semi-related to this sort of thing,
Well,
unless you're like a biologist, an epidemiologist, a virologist, something like that, you don't necessarily know shit because these are not easy fields to get into. You can't simply read a couple of books and be an expert and know more than the experts that actually work in these fields because
Matt,
they're
what's the
really
name of that?
complicated.
Yeah.
What's the name of that lady that they were on? There's like 12 or 13 doctors on the step of the White House or something like that. That
Oh
were
yeah. She's the one from don't even get me started on her. We've all seen enough of her and like the Trump grifters in the medical profession. There's like
what's her
doctors
name?
for truth, which are like
Yeah.
anti-vax doctors. Like don't
Right.
bother Googling
Oh.
it because
Oh.
it's just a hole of grifting. We're not even gonna
Oh.
give that screen time.
Oh
That's
God. Yeah, they're
Yikes.
terrible people.
I mean, there are nurses in Canada, all throughout Canada, but a lot of them in Ontario who have been fired over
well,
this stuff,
nobody,
over
no,
not getting vaccinated.
we've fired a couple of people, but nobody's been fired yet because they're not vaccinated. They've been suspended without pay. And the only people that have so far been suspended without pay are the people that do not at least have one shot at this point. Right? So you get your vaccine,
Yeah.
you're back to work. You're back to work. Or you go to your doctor and you get a note. That's all it is.
I'm not getting the Bill Gates
Yeah.
microchip. It's going
And
to
in
turn me into a
Ontario, the alternative.
Mike.
So,
I didn't
but
even get any of that, Mike. Sorry.
he's getting better Wi-Fi since he got his injection, right? So that's
Yes,
yeah.
of course.
But so they've laid off a bunch of staff, and it's not all nurses. You know, they're playing this up as you know when they say 140 people were laid off at the hospital, the two hospitals in Windsor. This is also a lot of support staff. This is Josephine, the receptionist. This is Jack, the security guard. This is Tom, the guy that's, you know, and they're all essential staff in a hospital because we need that place to run, except for 90% of the administration could probably go home and do nothing.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, like this is something that you're just going to need to do if you work in healthcare. You don't want to get the
Yeah.
The police department in my city decided that they don't have to require it.
For a profession that is constantly in contact with the general public.
Yep.
Oftentimes in very close proximity with
They're
others.
union and them.
They're not a
made
union. They're not a union. They are an
I know.
armed gang.
I know.
The police union is
I know.
not the
So you have to
you
let
can't
these
call
guys
in a
into your
union
house,
to bust up
right?
strikers. That's
Right.
Yeah.
So yeah, there's that. You know.
So
you gotta deal with shit like that in the world.
there's also apparently there's a over in China there's a bit of a financial crisis brewing.
Yeah.
So we've all heard now earlier this year we had the Evergrande, which, bunged up the
The boat.
economy by getting stuck in the Suez or the.
That was a fun spectacle, let me tell you.
Mm-hmm. So now we have another ever fucking problem with Evergarden out of China.
Evergrande?
Evergrande.
Yeah.
So Evergrande out of China.
Yeah, they're a huge company. I think they're like they represent up to almost 30% of the GDP in China or something crazy like that.
Wow.
Like an enormous real estate holdings.
Electric vehicles.
Electric vehicles, a soccer team, theme park. They have, but they're really debt driven. They operate their business like a lot of
So
Western companies.
just let's talk about their debt level for a second. So Evergrande, their main focus apparently has been real estate, and somehow they are $308 billion in debt.
Yeah.
What is Canada's debt? Canada's debt is what, 308 billion? I don't even think does anybody know what our debt is?
I'm looking it up right now.
Let's find out.
2.4 trillion.
Okay, so they've got some numbers on us, but 308 billion is like the debt of some nations, and this is one country, and it's based around the whole housing economy once again, right? So they decided that they could borrow money from the government, borrow money from various financial institutions, global financial institutions, and build houses and try and sell them to people. And China is a huge real estate market because they're now, over the past 15 years, it seems like China started to skew really capitalist, their modified economy. And I think Xi Jinping has realized now that things might not be so good if you're trying to sell people homes that aren't worth what, people are paying for them. The profit motivator behind homes. But what's going on in
the problem with our economy in general, in that it is a debt-based economy. There will never be enough money in existence to pay back all of that debt because money is, in effect, just debt. And what does it mean but labor time, abstract labor time? Since labor is what creates value, if you have a debt, then it's owed labor time. And since it's all debt, this is just this never-ending pile of labor that people, in theory, have to do, but there's not enough of us, and there's not enough hours in a day for anybody to ever work that much.
Yeah, so what's going on in China right now is they are literally demolishing these properties because they can't sell them. So rather than putting people in homes, because China does have a homeless population, if you can't sell it, we might as well destroy it. And
go ahead, check that away. Yeah,
I don't understand it. I don't even try to comprehend it. But this financial collapse of Evergrande could send ripples throughout the world, apparently, because you have a ton of people that have bought their debt, and if their debt goes unpaid, and so far it looks like.
Thankfully, though, not a lot of it is held by Western companies. So China holds most of the bag on this one. So they're either going to have to. This is why it might be like a Lehman moment, Lehman Brothers moment. Like, are they going to bail them out? Right? Like
the
they're
global
up for,
economy is so interconnected.
Right, they're a top 500 company in the world for their numbers, and they have an $83 million interest payment coming up in like days or something like that.
It was due last Thursday. They're in their 30-day grace period now. So this is the 30 days before the power company comes and turns your power off, right? So they've got their red notice.
So what would China do? Okay, they'd have to save face. So either A, they break the company up and sell it off into pieces, right? Or B, they bail them out. Those are the only two choices that I see.
I don't think China's prone to bailing them out. I think what you're going to see China do is basically say it's now a state-controlled enterprise.
Which and they have to do anyways.
Exactly. But how there was not you're going to see there's going to have to be some serious fallout because you don't see this Enron style collapse
So
in a
that's a
place
bailout.
like
So they're going to
China.
bail them out. So you think they're going to bail them out then?
No, Enron was not a bailout. They bailed out Enron multiple times. Enron
No,
eventually
I'm
just
talking about
collapsed.
the Chinese company.
No,
Right
they're
now, the
not
one
going to
that's
bail them out. Like they're going to assume control, right? Like
bailing
this
them out.
is
But nationalize at the cost of nationalizing is what I think he's saying.
yeah, exactly,
Yeah.
exactly. It would be like Canada taking over Bombardier, right? Instead of giving Bombardier $400 million, just buy the company, right?
Which, like, well, what if we did?
Well, look at what this is, over in China you have Evergrande, yet in Berlin you have them now buying like 260,000 rental units because they're taking them over from commercial landlords, and the city of Berlin is actually buying these housing units now because they want the profit motive out of it. I think we've come to realize that when you have the profit motivator behind social enterprises, it deteriorates them drastically. Look at social housing in Canada, right? Like we've allowed our government housing to just degenerate into like underfunded, poorly maintained, to the point that in Toronto, they're rather than fixing places now, they're just doing, they're tearing buildings down. They're tearing down government houses and putting up these public-private partnerships for housing instead, where the government hands the developer a big check. Here, Evergrande, here's $50 billion to build housing, and Evergrande goes, great, we're going to pay this back with interest, and we're going to get another $150 billion from these guys over here, and now they can't sell these places because people can't afford them. Yeah.
A house of cards.
Well, until they turn around and maybe make China a retirement destination for gentrification, maybe we should start gentrifying China. Maybe that's the solution to all of the world's issues.
Sure, that makes sense. Yeah.
It makes a lot of sense.
I don't have the answers.
Obviously,
but I do know.
You did it.
Yeah.
I just know people need homes.
Yeah.
People need homes, right?
Really?
Like I should not, in the 21st century, on my way to work in London, Ontario, see people sleep like they're sleeping outside. I'm not a fan of this new term they're using called sleeping rough. Like it's like you're camping, you're just sleeping rough. No, you're sleeping outside because you're homeless. This is not sleeping rough. This is homeless. And like we can fix this. We can 3D print these fuckers a house. Like
it's horrifying that we live in a society that's the case.
Yeah, it really is. And I mean, I can talk from experience at my work. Like, I work at a women's shelter, and sometimes part of my job is to help my clients find housing, right? And, fill out housing applications and stuff, especially if we're looking at like rent geared to income, that kind of thing. And like, just finding a place in this city to live that is affordable, like, it's insane. Like it's almost it's I don't want to say it's like impossible because I mean, yeah, like it's pretty close to impossible. Like I mean, it's like, I have clients who end up like finding places and stuff. It's not like it doesn't happen, but it's just that like it takes a really long time. It's very hard to find a place that's actually affordable. Like, especially for folks who are on like, welfare or disability or something, like there's not enough like funding for that. Like if you're on welfare, you get like, single person gets what, like $600 a month or something.
Yeah,
like that's not even enough to rent that's not even enough to rent a bachelor apartment in this city. Like it's insane.
Let alone paying for food
and
all the other stuff that you need.
Yeah, exactly. Like it's not just about paying rent. Yeah, like people have other expenses too, right? And
even if you're just making $15 an hour,
how hard it is.
I don't understand how anybody that's not making $20 to $30 an hour can survive comfortably in this 21st century. It doesn't matter where you are. And this is not just a London problem. This is not a Toronto problem. This is a global problem right now. It's
It
like
is.
you're either part of the landowning class or you're not. And right now, those that are getting into this game late, they're probably going to be screwed over because they're the ones that are going to, like, it's a Ponzi scheme. It's all an absolute Ponzi scheme that unless we're happy with killing off half of our population, it's got to collapse because we're killing people now every night on our streets.
Yeah. Well, it's ridiculous. It's ridiculous, and people are relying on these increases too for their retirement, which is scary, right? Because when this stuff does collapse, a lot of people are going to lose the only thing they have for their retirement.
Well, that's why I don't think they'll allow it to collapse until the boomer generation is kind of in the tail end of, like, when they've moved to the long-term care homes, the palliative long-term care homes, that's when you'll see something happen to the housing market, because until they figure out a way that we can pay for their care, and because I don't know if any of you have experience in long-term care homes in Canada as a whole. If you can't afford care, you end up in some pretty shitty places.
Yeah,
It's horrifying.
Like no privacy. Like we bitch about going to the hospital and having to share a room, and we think that's, like you're in a room with 4 people in the hospital. You're just there. I'll accept it. But when that's the tail end of your life for however long it lasts, it's inhumane. It's inhumane.
I helped a friend move their grandfather into a retirement home or a nursing home like that, and yeah, I would rather go with the assisted death than live in a place like that. Because
which begs
it's a
the
warehouse.
question, why isn't there more of a push, especially after the stuff that's happened in the pandemic, where the majority of the people that died actually died from, well, not maybe the majority, but a large percentage of the people that died were from some of these seniors' homes, and even some decent seniors' homes, right? Where these people paid like $5,000 a month to stay.
Okay.
Up here in Barrie, there was one where like I think 90% of the people died, right?
So
why
is that? I'll tell you exactly why that is. Because the inspections they do on these homes are a sham. The industry itself is a sham. I worked for one of the care homes in one of the larger organizations in Canada that's runs multiple homes, multiple provinces, hundreds of millions of dollars invested in this. And the care home I was working at, their executive directors quit. Everybody quit. Nobody knew what was going on. And we had an inspector walk in the door, and they told me, "You're the new executive director of this facility."
Oh.
So, yeah, when you have places like this, like there is not a lot of regulations, there's not a lot of laws. For long-term care government funded, there's a little bit more. They have to conform to a little bit more. But if you're just running a retirement residence, you just have to have certain levels. You just have to have like an RN on staff. Doesn't mean she has to be there, right? Like when you start peeling back that curtain, when your system administrator is all of a sudden the executive director of the facility taking you through a provincial audit, there's problems in the industry. Like why that auditor didn't go, "Excuse me, guys, your computer guy is in charge," right? Like not that, like, but
miss here.
Yeah, like great. I know where the files are. That was about all it was.
Here's the guy that's the smartest. He knows where everything is.
That place should have been shut down right then and there.
Wow.
That's it. Like those are the big warning flags for the.
So we're all actually in favor of publicly funded, run, regulated.
Way to go, Berlin.
That should go without saying. Your healthcare system is publicly run, publicly funded. Ergo, why is not your elder care? Why is not the entirety of your medical system, including dental, including
Why does care not include housing?
That's true too.
Good question.
We do have food and shelter as basic rights, but for some reason we seem to assume that shelter can consist of a tent or maybe a sleeping bag on a street corner. Apparently that consists of shelter
rough.
these days.
By the
Yeah.
way, we've really diverged.
And I mean, even
from-
those aren't allowed.
Yes, we did diverge, didn't we?
We did diverge big time.
Well, because
Where were
as
we?
we were on Evergrande.
Oh,
we were in
right.
China.
Those
We were in
days,
China.
yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, we were
China.
talking about financial collapse, and we know what happens when financial systems collapse. It's not the banks that come out on the shitty end of the stick. It's people. No. It's the people in the streets that lose their jobs and their homes.
Shock doctrine, baby. Shock doctrine.
Yep.
Yeah.
Shock doctrine. So anybody that doesn't know that, read some Naomi Klein.
Read books.
Yeah, read books.
I seem to remember last episode Mike bitching about Naomi Klein, but
I said she's a great author. her praxis has some serious flaws.
Questionable, okay,
right?
Yes,
but she's a great author.
Yeah, her theory is pretty
great orator, but you know, I wouldn't really call her an activist.
No.
So, hey, Bailey.
I don't want to talk about Naomi Klein right now.
So,
fair enough.
On that note of Naomi Klein, we did. I am sad to report her husband Avi Lewis did not win his seat. He but that's okay. I've seen enough. I grew up to Avi Lewis on Much Music and the New Music, and before he was political Avi Lewis, and he was just cool Much Music program director guy. But our Green Party leader resigned today, Anne Marie Paul.
Yep.
And
yes.
Not surprised. Surprised
No.
she even won the leadership to begin with.
Yep.
But you know, like it's the Greens, man. The Greens have been dead since 2008.
So scattered. They do not even share an ideology, any basis of anything other than green goods, green money, green energy, make money, green energy, make money. That's
Yep.
it.
Almost 800,000 to 880,000 Canadians voted for the PPC.
Scary.
That's
Scary.
You've got a lot of Nazis next door.
How many people voted?
I think 9.9 million or something like that. It wasn't our
Okay, so they're 1 in 10. So they're 1 in 10. What? They're 1 in 10.
Yeah.
What?
Like,
1
think
in
about
10
it. We
voting
live...
Canadians are in favor of a fascist party.
Well,
even though
1 in 10 Canadians have no idea what they're voting for other than the Freedom Party.
They may not have voted for that reason.
Right. But
no, this is the thing: is I think most of the people who voted for the PPC don't actually see it as a fascist party. Like so I was telling you guys this the other day, but one of my good friends from when I was growing up, somebody who I still to this day considered a friend, right? I found out last week that he went out and voted for the PPC, and it was shocking to me because I know what kind of person he is, and he's not at all like not a fucking fascist at all. You know what I mean? Like he's not like he's just not.
Is he an anti-vaxxer?
And there's a lot of people like that. I think.
Is he? So why is
anti-vaxxer? Like
okay? So why is he voting PPC then?
Libertarian.
He voted. He told me that he voted PPC because so this is kind of a stupid reason, but like freedom of speech was one, but the other one was because he's disillusioned by the other parties, by like the big.
That's
four
bullshit.
parties.
That's bullshit.
And,
don't let anybody tell you that. That's
okay, but
okay
here's the thing, though. Here's the thing, though. Right, and I'm not saying he did the right thing, but like we can't just.
Should we bring him in on a Hangouts call where I can berate him for 30 minutes?
No, but here's the thing. I think that obviously we don't like the PPC. Obviously, like they're a horrible party. They're a fascist party. We know that. But a lot of the people who voted for them don't actually see it that way. And there are good people who make bad choices. And I
These are
think
the
that we
same
need to
good
think about
people
how do
that's
we bring those people.
I don't
Yep.
think we.
Huh?
I think we need to remember that these are your racist uncles, right? And when I say your racist uncle, I'm
But my
talking
friend
about.
is not, though. This is what I'm
Right.
saying, is that
Bailey's point is
this is not,
some people been
my
duped.
point is that it's not all of, it's exactly, some people, yeah, like it's not necessarily our racist
So when he
uncles.
says
It's
freedom
people
of
that we
speech,
know in
what speech
everyday
is he
life
not
who,
free to say? Right? Like this is the thing. When people are
I don't
claiming
know.
free speech,
That's I didn't
the only
I
free
didn't ask about that.
the
I
only
didn't
free
we didn't
speech
have
that's
I didn't get
as
into that. But
this is the thing. When people say this free speech thing right now, there's only one speech that's being shut down continually and consistently, and that is hate speech. That is the one that we are refusing to platform.
right.
And that's other than that, I see no speech in the Western world being
Right.
shut down. You know, like
Right, I agree with you on that, but I didn't get into it with him, but like I mean I don't disagree with you on that, Matt. All I'm saying is that there are people who have been manipulated by PPC propaganda
oh,
who are
hugely.
not necessarily bad people. And, I think my friend is one of those people, as much as I'm pissed off and about like him doing that, right? I'm like, what the fuck? Like, why would you vote for that party? Like, it's an ongoing conversation, basically. But yeah, so I mean, this is what we have to think about. Like, how do we bring those people
You
over to our,
embrace them. You
over
embrace
to
them.
the
You embrace them. You know
right.
what? You know what
Well,
this
I
says
mean,
to me is you've got a friend you need to start hanging out with more. That's like
this is what I'm
he's
saying is
Yeah.
like, yeah, like this is the thing is like, it's on one hand, like we hate the PPC, we don't want to associate with those people, but like we also have to think about people in our lives who maybe like really fucked up and, fucking voted PPC and are being manipulated by their bullshit, but we can't just brush those people off
Oh, I know.
necessarily,
I know.
right?
I
I
can't
mean,
have PPC
yeah,
Plague Island. Like this is, like
yeah,
I
it's
totally agree with you, Bailey.
like,
We need to, and you know what?
and this is,
I think things like wishing people harm online and stuff like that, like I think that we should,
yeah,
we shouldn't
Supremely
celebrate
unhelpful.
somebody. Yeah, like I don't want to see anybody sick.
yeah.
I really don't. Like
what about
Mhm.
Nazis getting punched?
I like to see that.
So like
Yeah, I
I
gotta
like to
say
see that
that's,
too.
I'm 100%
Yes.
supportive.
That's a
Nazis
different
being
that's a
punched.
different
You
thing,
should,
right?
yes.
But
Yeah.
my
I
my uncle that watches Alex Jones, I really don't want him to die. Even though he's a little fucking nutty, I do want to talk to him more and stuff, and maybe reach out to him. But I don't want to see people die because of this
take them
shit.
for
I
beers.
just,
Yeah,
Take them
there's an
for
yeah,
beers.
opportunity for
Yeah.
people to change if they're still alive and not sick
Yeah.
with COVID.
so just a little
Yeah.
compassion, right? I think that's
Little
what we,
compassion goes a long way.
yeah.
Well, and that's the thing. A lot of us are
Yeah.
very isolated right now, and
Mhm.
our only connectivity, whether it's through distance or whatever, is this wonderful thing called the internet. And we need to be welcoming with our groups. We need to,
Yeah.
trolling is fun, and but no such thing as a stupid question, right?
And
Like if
I think that's a good segue, by the way, into
Ooh.
Occupy,
Ah,
because
there we
Yeah,
are.
talking
well,
about
like one
acceptance
last
and
thing,
stuff.
one last point. One last point is like, and this is going off of what Matt was saying, is like, it's gonna be a hell of a lot easier to, get people to kind of understand what's actually going on, and I guess bring them to our side, if you will. Like, it's a lot easier to do that if you're kind and, you know, receptive to them and not agreeing with them, not thinking, that voting for the PPC is okay,
Find
but,
commonality.
just meeting them where they're at and kind of, listening, and hopefully they listen back, and, you know,
Don't be a dick.
just, yeah, don't be a dick about it, because if you're a dick about it, then they're
I'm
gonna
a
want it.
dick
That's gonna make them
sometimes.
like
I'm not
more.
gonna lie. Sometimes I'm a big
I
dick
can't
because
help it sometimes. It's
yeah,
yeah.
And it's okay.
I
It's
mean,
okay. It's okay to be a dick
I mean,
sometimes.
it's one thing, right?
Willful
Draw your
ignorance
lines,
is.
though, when it comes to being a dick. Know what you should
There's a difference.
be a dick about and what you shouldn't.
Yeah.
Bailey knows I can
Yeah, and there's a difference between like saying fuck the PPC and then saying fuck you to a person that is your friend or your family member. You know what I mean? Like and it depends on the person. If people are not receptive and they're hardcore into this anti-vax,
We are not the
bullshit,
bullies. We are not the
racist, like,
bullies.
yeah,
We are the ones that will come
right,
and stop the bullies, but we're not the ones that are going to
right.
beat you up because you think different. We're going to try and educate you and guide you to like, yeah, guess what? The stoplight actually red means stop your car, stop driving before you kill someone or kill yourself. That's what we're going to tell you, right? Like, yeah.
Yeah.
Once again, the
So-
state
Yeah.
interfering with those stoplights. Fucking stoplights, man, telling us what to do.
Yeah.
So I wanted to go back into the acceptance things there, sort of being, reaching out to people and trying to meet people in the middle and talking to people about things and communicating. I think that's a good segue into the Occupy movement, because I think those are a lot of the things that it gave us, it brought out in us. It right now is, by the way, if anybody doesn't know, because some people might not or whatever, the Occupy movement happened 10 years ago, and it started by a whole bunch of people gathering at Zuccotti Park in downtown New York, and they were protesting the banks and crony capitalism, and that encampment got larger and larger. This was sort of spurred on, though, however, prior by the Arab Spring, where in Tunisia there was a huge uprising, very similar. And then after that, in Spain, the Indignados, and the Occupy movement took a lot of cues from those other movements. And what it was people gathering in public spaces, city parks, public squares, and then just basically taking them over and then having conversations about, what are the problems in the world? What can we do about these problems in the world? What are the problems in our community? What can we do about these things in our community? How do we want to look at our government? What does democracy look like? All these things were talked about, and it was done on a very horizontal level. But just to give you some context, that was the Occupy movement, and it happened 10 years ago. And luckily, myself, Bailey, and Eric were part of that. I'm not sure if Matt, I don't know if you got a chance to.
No, see, because here's the thing. I was living rural during Occupy, and it was a very different perspective when you were 3 hours away from anything. And yeah, I wish I could have been there, wish I could have done more.
Could you do me a favor, Matt?
Yeah.
On our YouTube channel, we have a video. If you could play it.
What video? Don't
It's
play
not
that.
the one you're talking. It's not the one you're talking.
Okay, because we're gonna do an Occupy Toronto,
Right.
Occupy
Yeah,
London
we'll
special
save your
in
we'll
October.
save
So,
your
like,
footage for that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Save
This
that.
is just general
Giving someone
Occupy
context.
talk.
Okay.
So continue.
So what are
No,
our
I mean, if
thoughts?
it's, I mean,
What's our thoughts about Occupy? Did it achieve what it set out to do? What were the effects? Well, tell your story of how you first heard of the Occupy movement. How were you brought to awareness of this thing?
so I remember hearing about Occupy Wall Street. I was a student at the time, actually. I was in third year university when Occupy happened, and I remember like just hearing about, I don't remember where I heard about it exactly, but I was kind of following it. I obviously supported it. And then eventually Occupy Toronto started, and it started to spread around the world, right, at that point. And then soon enough, there was an Occupy London, and yeah, I ended up joining Occupy London. But yeah, I don't remember exactly like where I first heard about the Occupy Wall Street movement. It did happen at a really crazy time though, as Mike pointed out. Like there was already a lot happening. Like there was like the Arab Spring that was going on. There was also the Indignados movement in Spain and in Mexico. This was like, a few years after the 2008 financial crisis. The WikiLeaks diplomatic cables and the Afghan war diaries, the Iraq war logs, all of these things were coming out also at the time.
Yeah, it was the tail
Chelsea
end of
Manning.
like this all kind of started to stem from the 2008 financial crisis coming to its head.
Yeah.
Right? Like this is, you
Yep.
got 3 years of houses being foreclosed on, and yeah, a lot of
tension.
Yeah.
Yep.
Definitely.
And especially with the Arab Spring, WikiLeaks played a huge role in that, and just the amount of corruption that was being exposed, and the truth about war and US war crimes, like all of this information was coming out, and for a lot of people it was brand new information, right? And it completely altered their perception of the world in general, but especially like their governments, their military, their economic system, right? Like it was like this huge global awakening for people, right? And in North America, that started to manifest as the Occupy movement. That was the thing that like really, kicked off, I think, these other social movements too that ended up happening over here. Like after Occupy, I mean, locally we had like the Caterpillar strike, lockout thing that happened. There was also the Idle No More movement, which spread globally. That happened like, late 2012, early 2013. That, and that a lot of the energy with that, got extended from the energy that was around during Occupy, right? And Anonymous, if we go like to the digital sphere, like Anonymous was, the Stratfor hack happened around that time, like 2011, 2012, and into 2013, like and even before that, like I don't know, there was just like this chunk of year after year where there was like social movement after social movement popping up around the world. But and even though it was unique and different based on like where it was happening, who was involved, what the issue was, like ultimately it seemed to all come back to the disillusionment with the current system, with governments, with the economy, with capitalism, with
right, like
with
because capitalism controls our government, right? Like this is what it was. It's like time to end the greed is what I saw Occupy as. Like what, like,
and have real democracy. That was another thing too, is the idea of real democracy, not like you go out and vote for a party that's like, yeah, exactly, yeah, you go out and vote for a party that's been bought by these lobbyists or whatever, like it's people started talking about real democracy and having, citizens, not necessarily citizens, wrong word, but just people, being able to participate more in, the democratic process and having more of a say.
We know the democratic process is co-opted. Like there's nothing. Our democracy is the biggest scam going because it's all money driven, North and South, UK. Everything that seems to operate under this capitalist system seems to operate the same way, and it's detrimental to us. And since Occupy, they seem to have successfully curtailed the Occupy movement, which, you were talking about this earlier, Eric, is where did we think it was going to go? And I hoped Occupy would have grown into something, but
would have been nice.
There's so much fractured in like center left to left that
it was never supposed to.
there seemed to be like a complete lack of organization for what the goal is with this. We have created this
Yeah.
movement. Now what do we do with it? Do we call for their heads? Do we, call what's the one thing we want out of this? And
That was the biggest criticism, was that, and that
Yeah,
was
what
usually
do you
wielded
want?
by most of the right wingers too. So,
Yeah.
we need you to A, give us a leader, okay? B,
Chairman
give
Boo.
us your demands, right? Because if it's not just one or two things or whatever, then you're just, you're complaining about everything, right? And the problem was we were complaining about everything. We were complaining about
It's just a lot to
capitalism. We were
complain
complaining
about.
about the system. We were complaining about patriarchy. We were complaining about, all these things, right? And we knew we weren't going to get anywhere. A lot of us had hope. Okay, there were a lot of people there with pipe dreams and stuff, but the reality is it brought a lot of people together to talk about a very sensitive topic that was taboo in mainstream media. For example, capitalism. You can't talk about capitalism. You can't talk about inequity. You can't talk about these things, and it brought people together. I was at a GA in Toronto, and I had come back from London, and I was talking, and they asked me to speak about London with a whole bunch of people. And this guy came and he started talking to me afterwards, and he's like, "Hey, man, do you think this is any good? Do you think this thing, uh, is going to be successful? Like, what is blah blah blah." And I was like, "Yeah, of course it is, because it brings people together." And I said, "Look, it brought me and you together, right?" And you know, that's what it was all about. Like, I learned about horizontal democracy. I learned about anti-oppression there. I learned about so much in my life. I made lifelong friends. So for me personally, it was a success, right? I think for a lot of people
Same here.
personally, it was a success too. It would never have been able to succeed in, like, to think that you call it a failure, like, these cultural movements take 20, 30 years, right? Like, a thing just doesn't happen once and everything changes. There's always a buildup. It's like you have a success, you have a failure. You build up and you fail. You build up and you fail. You build up and you succeed, right? So that's what we're doing. We're just the beginning. It's the cornerstone. It's the foundation of the new movement, I think, that's happening, where people believe in decentralization, horizontal, like, political systems, and the willingness to be able to talk and communicate with each other, and that's what the park did. It brought a lot of people together. And for people that don't know, there was thousands of cities and communities across the world where there were like dozens or hundreds or thousands or tens of thousands of people staying at these things or coming out to rallies every weekend. And it happened for months, right? So it was a historic event, and I think it was a successful event. I think it had tons and tons of problems, but it
Putting it mildly.
yeah.
Yeah.
And it wasn't going to fix everything, like, there were people that believed that.
No.
I wished it, but I knew that wasn't going to happen. But, it was amazing. It was an amazing time. And like Bailey said, the following year, following all that, like going into 2012 and even 2013, that was some crazy shit. Black Lives Matter, Idle No More, Quebec student movement. You had the factory in London with the guys getting closed down. Like, just so much stuff going on and so much awareness. And we had already formed that community around Occupy and then all these other things happened, which was great. So we were able to contribute and take part, and so yeah, that's my 2 cents.
Certainly was an optimistic time. It was. That's the most optimistic I have felt. Period.
Same here.
Like, to think that, hey, here's all these people that kind of also see the same problem that I see. Because before that point, I felt like I had been just shouting into the wind, shouting into a void. Like, am I the crazy one? Am I the only one that's seeing this happening here? Am I the only one that's actually concerned about this? But yeah, it turns out that no, I'm not the only one that's seeing this. And in like my first encounter with Occupy was the night that it started. I was at a street festival downtown London here, and I just happened to come home to put pants on because it was the first kind of chilly night of the year, and I just happened to glance at the computer, and there's this live stream of these people on Wall Street, and they're figuring out what they're going to do, where they're going to go, doing this horizontal democracy thing, and I got very excited because here is a movement of people that are concerned about the underlying problem of our society, and that is capitalism. Which is not to say that like you can blame everything on capitalism, but it's the fabric on which this problematic world has been built. And so if we
Yeah.
can perhaps make a move on that, make some sort of an action to undermine that thing, or at least make the critique more public, then maybe something might change. Like the rhetoric of the 99%, that really did it popularized the idea of extreme income inequality. This idea that the top 1% of everybody owns everything, that the rest of us have but scraps in comparison to the very, very wealthy. And since that time, it's got even worse. So from that perspective, Occupy obviously did not succeed at what it aimed to succeed at, because that was never possible. That was never a thing that we could have achieved. And I mean, I, like many other people, thought that there might be some momentum, that it might continue. And yes, it did have knock-on effects into other things like the assembly plant that we protested at, and various other things like that. And the one lasting impact, though, is that it did bring a whole new generation of activists onto the scene. Like when all of us met, I was like a little baby activist with some progressive but definitely liberal views of society.
You were
Believed
cute.
that things could be changed incrementally. Believed that you
Bailey
could.
was super cute.
She was true. She's still
All we
very
need
cute.
is love.
It's just
Yeah.
just
We just
love.
need love.
Yeah.
That's all we gotta do. Just love one
Yeah.
another. Yeah, that was
Yeah.
a very powerful idea, that we thought that through the force of our spirit, the force of our will, that things could be changed. But unfortunately,
We did do a lot. We did do a lot, though. We galvanized
Yeah.
the mainstream media for I say at least a half a year, right?
Yep.
The mainstream media, everything was Occupy or 99%, 1% income inequality, right? The conversations were happening, and
Yeah.
that
And some politicians started recruiting that language, and there was some uptake of that idea in the popular consciousness.
Mhm.
But
But baby
unfortunately,
steps, right? Like
Yeah,
this is
baby
folks got to realize, right? Like these things,
in the intervening years, I've come to the realization that a purely political solution to a problem like this is not possible. You just can't. Like, you can't create a political movement or a political machine, a party, or vote for an end to capitalism, because then you end up with a vacuum. You end up with, like, well, what do we do instead? And not only that, but if you had another thing waiting in the wings, if we had this like perfect utopic communist anarchist utopian plan in place, the spirit of the people in general still has capitalism at its core. So a purely political solution would just reproduce the same systems of oppression, of power, in new forms, in new ways, and you'd end up with the People's Republic of yada yada yada. This is how so many revolutions have gone in the past. So Occupy does represent something very important, and that is a spiritual uptake of these new ideas. That yes, we do need a political solution as well, but we definitely need to change the minds and the hearts and the spirits of people so that they themselves are democratic in preparation for the democratic society to come.
Right. So they understand some of these basic principles and ideas.
Yep.
And me discovering Occupy was watching the stuff in New York, live stream and stuff. And then I got in contact with a buddy of mine who I had gone to some protests in Toronto with the G20 and stuff. His name was Derek, and we started up. And then I got in touch with some Toronto people, and I started helping out with some organizing and stuff. And ran into you, Eric, I think, at a prep meeting, I think.
Yeah, I went to the Occupy Toronto beginning, and then we met at the prep meeting thereafter.
Yeah. And we didn't think that anything was going to happen in London. At least I didn't. Yeah, I don't know, you might have.
No, well, we were thinking like weeks away, we might try and do something, but then it was like next weekend. Surprise, sleepy old London.
Which was really
Yeah.
cool, because like I'd gone to Toronto and stayed there and participated in that stuff. And then, yeah, we heard that stuff had popped up in London. And to our shock and wonderment, there was so many new activists that sort of popped out on the community, you know? So that was a pretty remarkable thing.
I remember, so like I said earlier, I had been following Occupy Wall Street a little bit. I supported it. But, and then I heard about Toronto, again, supported it. But at this point, so I was in my third year university. I was at Western here in London, and I was in the social justice and peace studies program. So I was already of the activist mindset, I guess. I just wasn't involved in activism at that point. I was a student. I was kind of shy also, and I didn't really go out to many local events that were off campus, right? So, even after I heard about Toronto and, eventually the London camp popped up, I didn't go right away. I knew about it. I was thinking, I wanted to kind of get involved, but I was too shy. I didn't know anyone, at least like I didn't think I knew anybody who was there. And, I was like hesitant to actually involve myself early on. But I remember one night, this must have been like a week or two after the London camp got set up. It was the first night when there was a real threat of the police going in and raiding the place. Because I remember I was on my way to class one night, and my friend Symbol found me, and she's like, she was with another friend, and she was like, the Occupy camp might get raided tonight. We're gonna go down there. Do you want to come? And I'm like thinking, okay, I don't know, I have class, but then I decided I'm gonna skip my class. Fuck class. I'm gonna skip class. I'm gonna go to the Occupy camp. And so I went down there with Symbol, and it was amazing. Like, there were no cops there. There was a lot of people, a lot of tents, and I just remember going and immediately feeling so welcome and so warm. And just, yeah, like meeting people who were there and meeting, local activists who had been involved in stuff in the community over the years. Just like it was my introduction to the local activist community. And I swear to God, like after that night, I stayed pretty late that night. And I went back to the Occupy camp every single day since then. Like, I immediately felt like I was part of it, even though I didn't have like a tent set up at that point. It was like, I immediately felt like this is something I want to be part of. This is something, this is a community I want to be part of. Like, I have never felt as much hope in life in general as I did when I joined Occupy. Like, literally, it was this awakening for me, I was already politically minded. I was already, obviously, progressive, socialist tendencies, whatever, right? But, like, Occupy was the thing that really turned me into an activist and really solidified what I was learning, what I was feeling about the world. And, really, I felt like I found my tribe then. You know what I mean? It really felt like, this is where I'm supposed to be. This is what I'm supposed to be doing. And it was crazy because, that one night, it started at that one night. I decided to skip class and go to Occupy, and it changed my entire life. Changed my entire fucking life, and I will never forget it. And whatever, happened afterwards, this idea, this debate about whether or not Occupy really accomplished anything or whether or not it was actually useful or, I think that there's a lot of stories like ours where, whatever happened at your Occupy camp, whatever caused it to fizzle out or whatever, we all have these stories about personally. And I think that when you add up these stories, it really, it really shows that, Occupy meant something. Occupy did something. And, again, we know about everything that came out afterwards. There was, I don't know more, the Montreal student movement, which grew into less big, but, it kind of spread everywhere in Ontario anyway. We saw new student movements popping up, even though those didn't grow to the same extent as in Montreal. But you know what I'm saying? Like, so much came out of that energy from Occupy, or at least was influenced by that energy from Occupy. And I will never forget it. I don't think anybody who was involved will ever forget it. And yeah.
I will say the Occupy was also, because, not too many people paid attention to the G20 kettling. They figured, oh, that's just those Antifa. But Occupy was the first time where, like, soccer moms were getting pepper sprayed, right? Like,
Yeah.
this is,
Yeah.
oh, you're pepper spraying university students sitting on the
They
ground.
kettled in those ladies in New
Yeah.
York with those plastic fence things,
Yeah.
and then pepper sprayed them, and that brought a lot of people's attention, right? Yeah, I remember
This
that.
is when we started getting like the mothers movements and stuff like that that were coming out to the protests as well, because they're like, oh, these are people that are protesting things that I care about for my children, right? So,
Yeah.
but
Yep.
now the question is, what do we do now? What do we do now? Because, they
Well,
busted us all out.
Yeah,
Oy.
I've seen a lot of movements, and I think that everybody here can probably attest to this as well, that have utilized some of the processes and some of the things that were learned from the Occupy movement. For example, something extremely successful, Occupy Sandy, right? So the hurricane
Mutual
that,
aid.
yep, the hurricane that pulled through, this was New Orleans, right? No, New York. It was New York.
Yeah, New
Pulled
York.
through New York, wiped out a whole bunch of New York, and the federal agencies couldn't get in there. People were having problems getting food and clean water, and the people that were actually closest and on the ground formed a coalition. Um, and it was loosely from some of the people left over from the Occupy Wall Street groups and stuff like that, like some of the little side groups that had formed from that. And one person I know in particular that was one of the people that helped spearhead this. And they gave food and water and helped the people of New York when the federal agencies couldn't. And in fact, afterwards, years afterwards, I think I can't remember which federal agency, but there was a whole research thing done on why this was so successful, right? And if the government can implement these sort of things. So, and it was all about mutual aid, right? So that's just one thing right there that was really successful that came directly from the Occupy movement. The fact that we're actually talking about, the 1 and 99% constantly still to this day.
The fact that we
people-
have protest movements that
Yeah.
are not just like individual group protests anymore. It's, it's not just one group protesting now on the left. It's all of the left protesting, I find, right? Like we are
Right.
unified in
Yeah.
our messaging. It's just how do we take the next steps? How do we take this and go from where we were. Like, what's next? What's
Therein
next?
lies the trouble. Like, how
needs to be
do
changes.
you can't capture lightning in a bottle? The same circumstance is not going to show up again. But as we've talked about so far today, the world economy is kind of a little bit of a teeter at the moment.
Yep.
And I suspect that the next time that there is a crisis along the lines of 2008, there is going to be a populace that is primed for such a thing. Whether it's going to turn out in the same way or whether things are going to be even weirder, I'm not totally sure. But
Or there's a fluke of a pandemic that shows up that happens to disguise the impending collapse that was like
There's
you
a
know
conspiracy theory.
no, not conspiracy theory at all. This was just
Yeah.
really good fucking timing. Sometimes the timing is impeccable, right?
Yeah.
But this is,
that we can't discount the effects of climate disaster because the fires that we've been experiencing in the last few
Look
years,
at Russia right now.
they're
man.
only going to get worse. And
Yeah,
this
yeah.
winter is going to be nasty, and next summer is going to be nastier. And like at a certain point, people are going to start dying in droves, and it's going to be really scary. And if that's not going to produce a massive upswell of support for protest, I don't know what will.
Oh, there's going to be mass immigration from some countries where they're really low lying, like in the Indonesia area there, right? Like I know there's a bunch of countries, I don't know, maybe Vietnam or something like that. that's
Bangladesh is
really-
going to be underwater in
Yeah,
30 years.
Bangladesh, that's the one. Yeah, right. So
Miami as well, but apparently they're spending billions to get rid of the water in Miami because, this is, some people
Yeah,
are
it's
going to
definitely
be able
achievable,
to,
yeah.
real estate.
some people are going to be
Just,
able to afford to mitigate the problem.
go
Like
ahead
I'm
and
sure the
declare
people that
war on
live,
the ocean.
the people that used to live in basement apartments in Venice probably didn't think there was, they had anything to worry about for the longest time, right? It's sometimes cities change, and yeah, I just this is why we're doing this kind of is like we need more people to know that the left is good. That, like it's first, like at some point we'll have to talk about where the whole concept of left and right came from with like the French parliamentarian system, and it just happened to be which side of the room they sat on versus, you can, yeah, because I'm ready for reoccupy at this point. Like this is what it's
We
gonna
need
have
more
happen.
stuff like that to happen. That's the whole process too, right? Like there's going to be more things. We've already had them. Black Lives Matter, right? It was enormous in the United States.
Are we
and
doing a
still going.
Thanksgiving camp out at Victoria Park to bring, attention to the homelessness crisis?
I think there's some folks actually planning on
I'm down
doing
for that.
a peaceful reoccupation of the park right around the anniversary.
Well,
like the 5th. I think there's actually I've heard conversation about that. Yeah. So
nice,
who
nice.
knows?
But yeah,
be
it's
continued.
exactly. But in the meantime, occupy your local park, or at least scrawl some angry graffiti somewhere. That's not.
Yes. Be angry. Yes.
Not swastikas. No swastika.
Just
graffiti.
don't take a picture of it and put it on your Facebook and say, "Hey, nice art project, eh, Bailey?"
Not recommended.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So.
You know what else would be really good to get going again? Especially if, there's talk about like reoccupation and stuff, is food not bombs. That was one thing that we did a lot of here,
Did
during
that for almost
Occupy.
10 years. Well, how long did we do that?
Yeah.
5, 6 years, 7 years, yeah.
It was many years, and I remember, Occupy, one of the things that made it really special, in terms of like direct action and stuff, and what direct action really means is like, there were, there's homeless people on the street, people who don't know where their next meal is coming from. Occupy was a space where, you could get a meal every single day. You could get multiple meals every day, like we really took care of each other at the camp. Everybody who came to the camp, it's like you had a place there. You could crash there. You could get something to eat. You could, you could talk to people, make friends, whatever. Like it was an actual community in that
And
park.
this is the only way society is going to survive is by communitizing society, right?
Yes,
Like,
directly implementing the changes that you want to see, not just protesting about it. Protesting is great, absolutely, we should protest, but there are also ways that we can directly implement things that we don't currently have, or that we want to see
community
done
land
better.
trusts, community land
I
trusts.
definitely think occupations are one of the best ways to A, not only learn, B, teach, and C,
Yeah, we had
galvanize. And,
teach-ins and stuff. Yeah.
and you can create
Why do you
spectacles
think?
so easily. Like you can
And
create. Eric will love the spectacle.
did you
I
not?
love spectacles.
Right?
Did you not see how well the alt-right and the anti-vax have co-opted that methodology?
Yeah, I know.
This is the shame. This is the
They
shame
do
here.
have to give some credit where credit is due. They do have some pretty good mimetic engineerings working for them.
They go
They
ahead.
know how to create a froth and use it to good effect.
Yeah.
Maybe if we all just smoked less dope, we'd be a little more,
Well, yeah, I mean that might help.
Yeah. So
That's the
but
left problem, really.
exactly. So,
So
yeah. So I think have we covered everything for the show this evening for this 2-hour extravaganza?
I mean, we
think
could
we
probably
have.
still
Yeah,
talk
I
for
think
another 2
so.
hours, but I think we're good.
Yeah, like I think what we should do, like I was saying earlier, is I think that when it's when we're in October and it's around the time of the actual anniversary with Occupy Toronto and Occupy London, I think we should do a show specifically focused on that, and we should invite people and we should tell our actual stories from Occupy and show videos and like really share that experience, right? Tonight
So look
we
forward
had
to
multiple
that in a
topics,
couple of
like a
weeks.
general overview. Yeah. I mean, I think we should do that. I think that would be a really fun show, and it would bring
I
back a
think
lot of amazing memories.
Alex would like to join, and
I see Bailey
a
was
lot of
just
people.
Yeah.
volunteered for the organization of that episode. Thank you very much, Bailey. That's
I'm
great.
down. I'm down.
I
Honestly,
can't wait for all
I'm
the links
down.
you're gonna send us. Woo!
Cat herding.
Well, I mean, this is more just like reaching out to people, right? And looking
Yep.
at what videos do we want to show, and just telling our stories from Occupy.
Yep.
Sure.
So, okay.
Well, it's been a slice.
I just want to add really quick that speaking of videos and Occupy, go to our YouTube channel. Okay. Link is on the page or whatever thing you're watching
Go
right
to the
now somewhere.
indignants.org and you can link to our YouTube page from that, or you can just search for the Indignants on YouTube and you'll find us.
There you go. And I've been uploading old videos from the Occupy movement from my channel onto our new channel so that it can be shared by a lot of people. Since my channel's probably ghosted anyways, and this way maybe it gets seen a little more.
Mike, would you consider your Occupy footage open source?
Yes, definitely. Just give credit. Definitely. I've already put that in the bottom, I think, somewhere, that it's definitely people can reuse it. So
excellent.
Yeah, and keep an eye on that. There's more and more going up.
Okay, well, thank you very much, guys.
Awesome.
Thanks, everybody.
We'll be back again at
Thank
some point.
you.